I'm going to do this because I need to read. Again, we're standing on unceded land, and Carradine mentioned the disparity between people who cannot make the connection that if you're standing here for Palestine, you should also be standing up for Indigenous rights as well, because it's the same battle the world over. So before I begin to tell you about Australia's complicity in genocide, I want to take a moment to send our love and support to all those members of the LGBTQIA+ community attending the Sydney Mardi Gras today, and to thank those members within our community. Goodness, it's been an emotional week, folks, so pardon me. Within our community, who stand shoulder to shoulder and toe to toe with us for Palestinian justice and freedom. Sending our love and support to LGBTQIA+ Palestinians in Palestine and throughout the diaspora. Not one of us is free until all of us are free. Well, this week, Labor and the Coalition joined forces, yes, you heard that right, to vote down a motion put forward by Greens Senator Jordan Alexander Steele-John to condemn Israel's invasion of Gaza. Instead, they accused the Greens of trying to whip up hate to earn votes. Not because genocide is bad and it should be stopped. They also voted against resuming life-saving UNRWA funding for a population that is now being starved, despite there being no solid evidence as yet regarding the UNRWA allegations. And despite the fact that so many of those being starved are children, who obviously die a lot quicker from starvation than adults do. And may I remind everyone, as Jenna said, that starvation as a weapon is definitely a war crime. They've sent more Australian troops to the Red Sea to fight the Houthis, who, it should be noted, have not killed one person during any of their offensives on Israeli ships. Not one. Let me repeat that these are Israeli ships. We are defending Israeli commercial interests with our troops. Yeah. And most tellingly, as if all that wasn't enough proof of our government's complicity, they've awarded Israeli weapons company Elbit Systems a $917 million contract in the Defence Minister's electorate, no less. Yeah. Elbit CEO Bezalel Machlish said, and I quote, "Elbit Systems are at the heart of the IDF's operational solutions." Operational solutions. Yesterday I saw a video in my feed of a child in Gaza who was rescued by a civil defence crew after spending 9 days under the rubble of his demolished home in the Al Zaytoun neighbourhood. He was found freezing, starving, dehydrated and alone. He was emaciated, skeletal, barely clinging to life. In fact, it very much reminded me of the images of Auschwitz survivors. Except that this was a 9-year-old boy. This is what they mean when they say operational solutions, which is a terrifyingly sanitized way of saying genocide, slaughter, ethnic cleansing, a holocaust. But let's give them a near $1 billion contract. What could go wrong? And this is what I'm addressing today. Australia is supplying weapons to Israel, as Brent touched on. Penny Wong, Anthony Albanese, and the majority of the Labor government, including our own MP, Susan Templeman, have made statements asserting unequivocally that Australia is not providing Israel with weaponry and has not done so in the last 5 years. Yeah, it's bullshit. Let's examine some facts. Figures from Penny Wong's own Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, show $13 million in sales under the arms and ammunition category within this period. These documents, by the way, were obtained through Freedom of Information, because Australia is one of the most secretive countries in the world when it comes to the question of who we're selling arms to, how much we're paying, and how much we're being paid. And to clarify, weapons also includes parts, mechanisms, or materials used to make weaponry, such as aluminium and steel, both of which Australia supplies in quantity to Israel for the production of armoured vehicles and weapons. Again, as attested to by available export figures to Israel, which you can Google on the World Wide Web. Maybe they didn't think we would. But, you know, watching babies starve and be blown to pieces has a way of motivating people, strangely enough. Did you know that within days of Russia invading Ukraine, the Morrison government halted exports of aluminium to Russia? You can Google that too. Under our current government, aluminium exports remain in place to Israel, despite the ICJ ruling that genocide is plausibly being committed, and despite calls for the UN for an immediate arms embargo on Israel. Yeah. Speaking of being blown to pieces, let's talk about the Israeli Spike missile for a moment. This is a weapon that can punch a hole through the wall of a concrete apartment block, and it then unleashes a spray of shrapnel, killing everyone within a huge radius. Australia purchased some of these from Israel as battle-tested. And anyone who has read Anthony Lowenstein's book, The Palestine Laboratory, knows that the term battle-tested means tested on Palestinians. That's not a theory, that's a fact. Not only did Australian Defence Force purchase these Spike missiles from Israel, but as of last October, Australia has approved contracts to manufacture the Spike missile here in Australia. And we know this is true because it's all over their website, the weapons manufacturer website, which is Rachael Brady. Furthermore, Australian steel producer Biz Alloy holds very lucrative contracts to supply Australian steel to Israeli weapons manufacturer Rachael Brady. Currawong Engineering in Tasmania makes the Corvid 29 engine, which is used in Israeli strike drones. Now, this is nowhere near an exhaustive list. I don't have the time to mention all of them today, but I can assure you it is a very long list. And in the last 5 years, over 300 weapons export permits have been granted to Israel by our governments, past and current, under the guise of national security that refuse to make the details available. So there's currently a federal court case underway to obtain access to all the permits that have allowed the export of weapons granted by the Minister of Defence since October 7, and I'm sure we all can't wait to hear about how that turns out. In closing, I have to wonder, as I'm sure many of you do, how do our politicians not lay awake at night, eaten up by guilt and anguish and shame and grief? Sorry. How do these images of broken bodies and devastation and depravity and cruelty not haunt them and motivate them to do something more than strongly urge or express concern? When did they lose their connection to fucking humanity? We should all be terrified of this kind of deadness that can creep into the soul of a human being, this astounding lack of empathy, especially in the people we call leaders. But mark our words, when history remembers this shit show of unabated depravity, brutality, and psychopathy for what it is, and it is a genocide, we will not let those of you who were complicit forget exactly what you did and where you stood and the lies that you told. And we must, friends, as large and as insidious and as powerful as they are, work together to hold them accountable for betraying humanity. And we'll keep you posted on how we are going to do that together.
We're with you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here today. And remember, there is no liberation without community. Please.